This is Daniel in the Lion's Den. We have not been told the whole story, folks. Wait till you hear. Daniel in the Lion's Den, the way it is told in the Septuagint, is like you have never heard it before. It's Daniel chapter 14. It's titled Bel and the Dragon. Now, there are only 12 chapters in our regular Bibles that most of us have, but there are 14 chapters because of the story of Susanna and this story in this account in the Septuagint, which the Septuagint gives us more interesting information as to why and how it came about that Daniel was put into the lion's den. And it tells us exactly how long he was there. And it gives us some more information too that's pretty interesting. So I'm not going to give you anything fancy. I'm not a techie person and I don't do fancy anyway. So it's going to be simple and raw, but it's some cool information, and just kind of sit back and let's go through it together. Like I said, it's chapter 14, entitled Bel and the Dragon. Verse 1 says, I cannot pronounce this king's name. I'll do my best. The king Astyages, I don't know what his name is, has gathered to his fathers, which means he died. And Cyrus of Persia received the kingdom. And Daniel conversed with the king and was honored above all his friends. His friends included Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, which are not their Hebrew names. But, that's their names that they were given that we know them by more. But he was honored above all his friends by the king. Now, the Babylonians had an idol called Baal, and there were spent upon him every day, 12 great measures of fine flour, not just regular flour, fine flour. Now, I don't know how much 12 great measures is, but it sounds like a lot. Okay, there was also given 40 sheep. Now, 40 sheep's a lot. Depending on the size of a 90-pound lamb will yield about, a good 30 pounds of meat. So, depending on the size of the sheep, this was a lot of meat. And then it says also 6 vessels of wine. And when I saw the 6 vessels, I was reminded of when Jesus turned water into wine at the wedding of Cana. And there were 6 water pots that Jesus turned the water into wine in those 6 water pots. There's a note in one of my Bibles that says that those water pots would have held anywhere from 20 to 30 gallons. Well, I'm thinking, okay, if these 6 vessels were similar to those, and let's say they held 20 gallons, that's 120 gallons of wine. I mean, there's a lot being given to this god, this false god, on a daily basis. Every day they did this. So every day there's food being given to this false god called Baal. The king worshipped it, and he went daily, every day, he went daily to adore it. But Daniel worshipped his own God. And the king said to Daniel, he said to him, he honored Daniel. He loved Daniel. He honored him. But he said to him, why dost thou not worship Baal? He knew, it was no secret that Daniel didn't worship the same God he did not hide the fact that he was not worshiping their God. None of them did. Well, some of them did, but Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego didn't either. So Daniel answered him and he said, because I may not worship idols. I don't worship idols that are made with hands. I worship the living God who has created the heaven, the earth, and who has sovereignty over all flesh. So he's telling him, hey, look, I worship the one true living God who created everything you see and is in charge of and has sovereignty over everything and everyone. Daniel did not sugarcoat anything about his faith to this new king that had taken over after the other king had died. Okay, verse 6. Then said the king to him, Thinkest thou not that Baal is a living God? Seest thou not how much he eateth and drinketh every day? So the king is like, you don't think Baal's living? Don't you see how much he eats and drinks every day? He's living. I mean, the king is convinced. Daniel smiled. That blows my mind right there, that he smiled at the king. It's like, you want to offend somebody who thinks they're right and you're smiling at him? Oh, hello. Especially the king. Good grief, Daniel. You are brave. But he smiled at the king and he said, O king, be not deceived, for this is but clay within and brass without. And it did not eat or drink anything. So Daniel kind of smiles at the king, which to me, I would think the king would take offense at that, but I don't know. And he tells him, don't be deceived. This is clay on the inside, covered with brass on the outside. Clay and brass does not eat. This thing has not eaten or drank anything. So he's basically telling the truth, but it's like he's really standing up to the king. It's like, you're being deceived, dude. He's brave. We should be so brave. So the king, he got mad. The king was wroth, which means he got mad. He called for his priests, and he said to them, if you tell me not who this is that devours these expenses, you'll die. So in other words, tell me the truth or you're dead. But if you can certify to me that Baal does devour them, then Daniel will die, because he's the one lying to me. For he hath spoken blasphemy against Baal. And Daniel said to the king, let it be according to thy word. Daniel was not afraid. His life was on the line, and he said, okay, king, okay, let it be the way you say it is. So verse 10 says, now the priests of Baal were 70. So that's 70. There were 70 priests besides their wives and children. And the king went with Daniel into the temple of Baal. So the king went with Daniel to the temple. So Baal's priests said, lo, we're going out. We go out. But thou, O king, set on the meat and make ready the wine, and then shut the door fast and seal it with thine own signet. And tomorrow when thou come in, if thou findest not that Baal hath eaten up all this food, then we will suffer death, or else Daniel that speaketh falsely will suffer death. So it's either us or him. So there's either 70 priests or Daniel that are going to go down tomorrow. And they're confident that they've got the wool pulled over the king's eyes here. So there are 70 men, 70 priests, and their wives. So I'm guessing they all had wives. So that's 140 people, and their children. Lord knows how many children they had. So we're talking that's a lot of people. So they're telling him, hey, okay, we're leaving. When you leave, seal the door so that you'll know that nobody's tampered with the door. And you can come tomorrow and see this, that nobody's tampered with it. But that food will be gone. And you'll know that he ate it. We'll prove it to you. They think they're really going to prove this to the king. So either they'll suffer death or Daniel will suffer death. So we'll suffer death, or else Daniel that speaks falsely against us will. And they little regarded it. I mean, they were confident. For under the table, this is why they were so confident. Under the table, they had a privy entrance or a private entrance whereby they would enter in continually and consume the things that were set therefore. So they were privately entering in under the table into this private entrance that was not known to the others, and they were eating this feast every day. So when they were gone forth, so they went out, the king set the meats and everything before Baal. This is their offering to their God. Every single day they did this offering to God. How often do we offer to God? Hopefully you offer him up praise and prayers and honor every day. That was a little convicting to me. How much honor am I giving to my Lord, my King, my God, the great God of creation every day? You know, the real true God. So when they had gone out, the king set meats in there. Now Daniel had commanded for his servants. Daniel had servants. He was set in a high place. So he had a high ranking with the king in that. And he had servants under him, and he commanded them to bring ashes. So here they are in this temple of Baal, this false god, and they're bringing ashes in there. And as it says, the ashes they strewed throughout all the temple in the presence of the king alone. Then they went out and shut the door and sealed it with the king's signet, and they departed. So this verse 14 tells us a lot, because the king he put the fine flour and the goats, the sheep meat, and the pots of wine, and everything's all set up, and he's, we give this to you, oh God, Baal, whatever the rituals were. And then as they worked their way out the door, they spread these ashes all over the floors. And then they went out, and Daniel and Daniel's servants and the king went out, and the king, they shut the door, and the king put some kind of a seal on the door, and then they used wax a lot back then to seal things. I don't know if a door would be sealed with wax or not, but I'm thinking it's possible. And then the king had a ring which was engraved, which he would press into that warm wax, and which would dry quickly. But anybody could see that was the king's mark on that. And if they tried to open the door, of course, the seal would be broken pretty easily, and then it would be known what was going on, and it would be known that somebody had tried to tamper with things. Now verse 15, now in the night came the priests with their wives, so 70 men with their wives, 70 women, 140 people, and their kids, all of their children, the priests with their wives and their children, as they were wont to do, and they did eat and drink up all. So they did this on a regular basis, continually, over and over on a regular basis. These priests and their families ate this food all the time. Now in the morning, when the king arose, and Daniel went with him. Okay, so the king got up in the morning, and Daniel went with him. Now verse 17, and the king said to Daniel, the king said to Daniel, are the seals whole? And he said, yes, king, they are whole. So the seal had not been broken. They looked at it. Daniel was with the king was with Daniel. They looked at it. The seal was not broken. It was still whole. It was still good. It was still, not tampered with. And as soon as they had opened the door, the king looked in upon the table, and he cried out with a loud voice, oh, great art thou, O Baal, with with thee is no deceit at all, which was not true, because there was deceit. There was a lot of deceit going on. You know, we could compare that probably to our world today. There's a lot of deceit going on here and there, everywhere. Good grief. We won't go there. Not today, anyway. But there was a lot of, deception going on the part of these men and their families who were consuming this food every day. And the king was oblivious. He believed it. He was being led to believe he was. He was deceived. He was being led to believe a lie. And so he's, here he is honoring this king, this false god. That look at the table. He ate it. All the food is gone. And then, to me, this is unthinkable. But Daniel laughed. Verse 19 says, look at it. Then laughed Daniel and held the king that he should not go in. So the king, I guess, was getting ready to step in the door, and Daniel held him back and laughed. How offensive. That's what I'm thinking in my mind anyway. How offensive. But he did, and he said, look at the pavement. Look at the floor. Behold now the pavement, and mark well those footsteps. Whose footsteps are these? And the king said, I see the footsteps of men, women, and children. And the king became angry. And could you imagine? He was mad. He saw all these footsteps in the ashes that Daniel had spread on the floor. And the king got mad. He knew something was awry. He knew something was wrong, and that there was deception at this point. He understood that, this is not good. So verse 21, he took the priests with their wives and their children, and let's see, who showed him. I guess he forced them. He's like, how did you get in here? You were in here. Somebody was in here. I know you were in here. I see your footprints. We put down ashes. Your footprints are all over the place. Show me. And so the priests and their wives and their children, he took all of them, all these hundreds of people, and they showed him the privy or private doors plural, where they came in and consumed such things as were on the table. Therefore, the king was mad. At this point, the king knows that they've been deceiving him all along. He probably feels like a laughing stock, among the priests anyway. They had all the people fooled, not just the king. They fooled the population, general population, I'm sure. But the king was mad. Verse 22, therefore the king slew them. So he killed them. I'm guessing it just says them. So I'm assuming he had the priests, the wives and their children. I don't know if he slew all of them, I don't know. But it says he slew them. So I don't know if it was just the priests, the wives and the children, but wow. That could, if it was them, their wives and their children, thinking that they're going to follow in Daddy's footsteps and keep trying to deceive the king and thinking that's okay to do. I'm wondering, and they were all a part of it. The adults especially should be held accountable, but I'm thinking, wow, this was very possibly and probably hundreds of people. This could have been 300-400 people, depending on how many children they had. 70 priests, 70 wives, all their kids. Oh my goodness, that's just wow. Anyway, the king slew them and delivered Baal, the false god, into Daniel's power, who destroyed him and his temple. So Daniel, the one who was standing up for the one true God, the one who was doing what was right and was trying to help make the king understand about this deception, was given power to the power, to, it was put into his hands the ability to have this false god made of clay covered in brass and his temple destroyed, and he did it. Wow, wouldn't we love to destroy some false temples today? That is so cool. Stand for what's right. Maybe we can. And in that same place there was a great dragon, which they of Babylon worshipped. And the king said to Daniel, Wilt thou also say that this is of brass? Lo, he liveth. He eats and he drinks. He eateth and drinketh. Thou canst not say that he is no living God. Therefore, worship him. So the king's, he's feeling pretty bad because he's been worshiping this false god. Daniel's proved it's a false god. And he's like, okay, well, we also worship this dragon. He must be the real God. He's really the real God. Worship him. Because, he says, are you going to say that he's just made of brass too? He liveth, he says. He eats and he drinks. And you can't say that he's not a living God. Now, maybe it was a living dragon. I don't know. I'm thinking it may have been a living, breathing dragon because of what we're going to read next. I think it's possible that he's a living, breathing dragon because Daniel said, verse 25, he said unto the king, I will worship the Lord my God, for he is the living God. But you give me leave, O king, and I will slay this dragon, and I'm going to do it without a sword and without a staff. So the king said, okay, I'll give you leave. The king is asking him to prove it. And Daniel is doing it in the right way. Daniel's saying, I'm not going to use a staff. I'm not going to use a sword. I'm not going to use weapons. I'm not going to use warlike weapons. I am just going to use proof. I'm just going to use facts. I'm just going to show them to be false and to be wrong by using factual information, by doing things that will prove that they are not gods, that they are not to be worshipped and honored and put into such high esteem. So he's going about it the right way. I think we could take a lesson from that today in our world, but there again, I'm not going there. Okay, so he's not going to use sword. He's not going to use staff. So the king said, okay, I'll give you leave. You take the time you need, go and, prove me wrong. Try it, prove me wrong. Okay, you did it once. And I think the king's hoping that he can't do it again because he doesn't want to feel like a fool. He doesn't want to be made to look like a fool. So then Daniel took pitch and fat and hair and did seethe them together, and he made lumps thereof. This he put into the dragon's mouth, so that the dragon burst in sunder. And Daniel said, Lo, these are the gods that you worship. So Daniel once again proved if this was a god, he would not have been able to so easily have been put into, he burst asunder, for crying out loud. That's kind of gross. If it was a real creature, a real dragon type creature, guts everywhere. Ew, that's just, he burst asunder. Well, either way, this whatever they were worshiping did burst asunder, and it wasn't, Daniel did not use anything, pitch, fat, and hair into a lump. I mean, come on, what kind of weapon is that? So he's using weapons that really aren't seen as weapons. I don't know. It's just kind of, that's kind of cool to me. Daniel is proving to them in ways that aren't harmful or hurtful or mean or anything, but proving to them that what they're worshiping is wrong. Don't worship these. This is not what you should be worshiping. Then verse 28, when they of Babylon heard that, they took great indignation, and they conspired against the king, saying, the king has become a Jew. and he has destroyed Baal, and he has destroyed the dragon, and he has put the priests to death. Okay, so he put the priests to death. So maybe it wasn't the wives and children. I'm not sure. But at least the 70 priests, at least 70 women lost their husbands. Kids lost their daddies because of, I mean, think about that. You know, if you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing that could be punishable, are your wives and children going to suffer for it? Think about that. Take some time to think about how you're living and what your choices are and how it's affecting your family. That's what something that I took from that, and that's something that we need to think about. That doesn't always, you know, we always think, oh, I'm not hurting anybody but myself, which isn't usually true. But you know, they were accusing the king. Okay, you know, we went in and we went into this Jewish nation and we conquered their people and we brought these people back to be, you know, to serve us here in Babylon, and here you are becoming one of them. You know, this, you know, you might be the new king, but you ain't gonna stay the new king long because we ain't happy with you, because look what you're doing. You're siding with our enemies here. You know, you're becoming one of them. So they're really giving the king a rough time. So verse 29. So verse 29. Daniel had slain the dragon, and they put verse 29. They put the priests to death. So they came to the king and they said, deliver Daniel to us. Deliver us, Daniel, or else we will destroy you and your household. Which, you know, they're going to destroy the king. They're going to destroy his family. They're going to destroy everything he's got, his entire everything. You're done. You're done, king. We're not having this. You are not siding with our enemies. That we conquered them. They're not. You're not. No, this ain't happening. You know, they were very, very, very upset. The king saw that they were pressing him. They pressed him sorely, and being constrained. I mean, they must have not let up at all. I mean, they were really pressing. They were not happy that they had lost their gods and that he seemed to be turning and siding with what had been their enemies. And they weren't going to take it. I mean, they pressed him hard, and they got him to give in. And he delivered Daniel to them. And they cast him into the lion's den. The people that were the horrible people. Anyway, they cast him in the lion's den, where he was for 6 days. Notice that, verse 21. Daniel was in that lion's den for 6 days. And verse 32. And in the den were 7 lions. He was in there for 6 days with 7 lions. And they had given them every day 2 carcasses and 2 sheep. So every day, those 7 lions were fed 2 carcasses, and then they also let 2 sheep, you know, put 2 sheep into the lion's den for the lions to kill and eat. Which then, when they put Daniel in, they didn't give them the food. So they gave them 2 carcasses and 2 sheep, which then were not given to them, to the intent that they might devour Daniel. They wanted those lions hungry. They wanted Daniel dead, because he was stirring up way too much truth into the king's life and putting their false gods to shame, and they didn't like it, and they weren't going to have any part of it. So for 6 days, see, we aren't told how many days and how many lions anywhere but here that I've read so far. And this, to me, this is really cool. It gives more information, and I think it's awesome. I love it that they give us this extra information. 6 days. Can you imagine 6 days sitting there watching 7 lions lick their chops? There's our meal. I'm just like, oh my gosh. Then verse 33. Now there was in Jewry a prophet. In other words, among the Jewish people, there was a prophet called Habakkuk. Now we've read, there's a book in the Bible, Habakkuk. You've read it. If you've read your Bible, you've read it. Now Habakkuk had made pottage. And pottage is kind of like a stew. And he broke bread and he put it in a bowl, or a bowl. I don't know what a bowl is exactly. It was some kind of container. And he was going into the field to bring it to the reapers. Now, the reapers are the people that are reaping the harvest. It must be harvest time. And there are people out in the fields working to reap that harvest. So this is plural, reapers. You've got multiple people. So he must have had a pretty good amount of bread and stew in these containers, because this was going to feed multiple people, because there's not just, 2 or 3 people out there in the field probably. There's probably a few. Okay, so he prepares this food, this stew and bread. In verse 34, to me this is so cool. Verse 34, but as he was bringing it to the reapers, but the angel of the Lord said to Habakkuk, go, carry the dinner that thou hast into Babylon unto Daniel, who is in the lion's den. Okay, God knew where Daniel was, and God's going to send him some food to stay nourished where he is, in this place where it's a life-threatening situation, and he was put there by evil people doing wrong. And that's just like, wow. It reminds me that I'm in a hard place right now. I've been in a hard place for a little while now. God knows where I'm at. God's got something that he's preparing. Somebody's preparing bread and stew for me somewhere. Not physical bread and stew, but maybe, who knows? But God's preparing a Habakkuk for me. Or maybe I need to turn that around and think, I don't have much because I'm in a hard place right now and I'm going through some tough things. But maybe there's a way that I can be a Habakkuk to someone else. What can I do? What do I have? What do I need to be using? That really spoke to me. But the next verse is really, the next 2 verses are so cool. The next several verses are really, really cool too, because this is just amazing to me. So anyway, the angel tells Habakkuk, hey, I know you're headed to feed your workers out in your field, but take this dinner to Daniel in Babylon because he needs it. He's in a lion's den and he needs this food. Take it to him. Verse 35, Habakkuk says, but Lord, I never even saw Babylon. I never saw Babylon. Neither do I know where the den is. Like, even if I knew where Babylon was, even if I had been there before, how do I know where this lion's den is? He didn't say he wouldn't go. He just gave the facts. I don't, it's like, Lord, I'm willing to take it to him. I'm willing to do what you're telling me to do, which that's step 1 in your life and mine. I'm willing to go, but I don't know the way. I never been to this town. I've never been to this city. I've never been to this country. I've never seen it before. I don't know where the lion's den is. I don't know where to go. I don't know how to get where you want to send me. But it appears as though he was willing. I never saw Babylon, and I don't know where the den is. He didn't say he wouldn't go. He didn't refuse to go. He didn't fuss with the Lord or anything like that. He didn't argue with him like Moses did, saying, I can't do this. So I think he was willing. He was just like asking for more information. Hey, I don't know where Babylon is. I don't know how to get there. I don't know how long of a trip it's going to be. And I don't know if I can find this lion's den where Daniel is. This part to me is so cool. He was willing. People, we have to make ourselves willing to do. I don't know how to do what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing on here. I don't do anything fancy. I don't have any tech skills. I don't have any, big knowledge or I haven't been to Bible school who who am I? I'm nobody. Okay, I'm nobody. But I put this out there because it's cool information that is really awesome that most people don't have. Most people don't have a Septuagint, and I do, and I want to share it. I want to share it because it's really interesting to find out more of these accounts of these historic events that took place that we're somewhat familiar with, but not entirely, because there's more facts that haven't been told. And I think it's neat. So I look at verse 35 and I'm thinking, oh no, I have to be willing. Where do you want me, Lord? Will I go? Go where I send thee, people, Anyway, verse 36 blew me away. Then the angel of the Lord took him by the crown and bore him by the hair of his head, and through the vehemency of his spirit set him in Babylon over the den. This angel literally grabs him by the hair. It's like, okay, I have a ponytail. It's like this angel just grabbed me by my ponytail and just plops me down where I need to be. How cool. If I were as obedient as Habakkuk and Daniel to the Lord, I wonder if God would do that for, if he would use me in such a way. Or you. Are you open to be used like that by God? How cool would that be? How scary. If it were me, I'd be holding on, onto my stew in one hand and my bread in the other hand, and that angel would grab me by the hair and I'd probably drop it all. And some more stuff too, just because, oh my gosh, that is just the most amazing thing. God is so awesome. Lord, you are amazing. But I just thought that was so cool. The angel of the Lord took him by the crown and bare him by the hair of his head, and through the vehemency of his spirit set him in Babylon over the den. He put him right exactly at the very exact spot he wanted him and needed him to be. Lord, lead me that way. I want that to be my prayer. Lead me to the exact spot where you want me to be. That is so cool to me. I just thought that blew me away. If that doesn't stir up your spirit and regenerate your soul, there's something wrong. That is just cool. That's amazing. There's more. Okay, so verse 37. Verse 37. And Habakkuk cried, saying, O Daniel, Daniel, take the dinner which God hath sent thee. So the angel put him down over the lion's den. And then Daniel, he hears this voice calling his name. Daniel, Daniel, take the dinner God sent thee. Now, did Daniel know it was Habakkuk? I don't know. Daniel was an old man by now. He hadn't seen Habakkuk, and even if they did know each other, I mean, they were both prophets, so maybe they went to school together. I don't know, but even if he did know him, did he recognize his voice? It had been decades. So he may have thought it was just an angel. I don't know, but it's interesting. Take the dinner which God hath sent thee. He didn't say, hey, this is Habakkuk. Hi, Daniel, I brought you some food. He said, take the dinner God sent you. And Daniel said, thou hast remembered me, O God. Neither hast thou forsaken them that seek thee and love thee. That speaks so into my spirit. I'm going through some tough stuff. God remembers me, and he's there, and he's preparing things. When this probably didn't happen the minute Daniel was thrown in there, he may have been in there a while. We don't know how long he's been in there, but he's been in there a while. And I'm thinking, how cool is that? That, it just blows my mind. Daniel's like, you remembered me, oh God. He immediately, as soon as that food was delivered, he gave God the praise and the thanks. And he says, you haven't forsaken them that seek thee and love thee. And I'm thinking, Lord, do I really seek you and love you in a way that you would do something that wonderfully miraculous for me too? I mean, I wonder about that. I think it made me think of that when I read this. I want this to speak to my heart. I want God speaks to us through his scripture. Immediately upon receiving this meal, which was probably made to feed, several people, it may have lasted Daniel a few days to keep him nourished. And I'm thinking, immediately he just, God, you remembered me. You've never forsaken those who seek and love you. Verse 39, Daniel arose. He arose. That means he was either sitting or laying. I think I'd be huddled in a corner somewhere trying to climb the walls, get away from them lions, but Daniel didn't. Of course, the Bible tells us that an angel came and shut the lions' mouths. But, wow. So Daniel got up and he started eating. And when I thought about that, here he is sitting in front of 7 hungry lions. Tell me them lions don't smell that food. I mean, let's be real here. Tell me those lions don't smell that stew. He's sitting there eating food in front of hungry lions. That's mind-blowing. To me, that just, wow. This spoke to me. This just really spoke. I hope it speaks to you. I hope you get at least something out of my feeble attempt to show you how amazing this is. Oh, it's just awesome. So he arose and he ate. And the angel of the Lord, he's so good. He didn't make Habakkuk walk back home. The angel of the Lord set Habakkuk in his own place again immediately. He's just, boom, okay, you did what you came here to do, go back home. Plop, there you are. Habakkuk's probably looking around going, what the world just happened? Yeah, and then he had to go fix some more stew and bread for the people working in the field, which wasn't a small task back in those days. So I kind of felt bad for him for that, but how cool is that? That's just, God did it for them because they were those who would seek and love him, who lived for him, who shared him, who weren't afraid in front of anybody, the king, to just declare him Lord. Tell me that's not needed in our world today. You and I, we need to really take a lesson here. We need to seek. I'm really convicted to seek what's going on in my life right now. I'm in a hard spot. I could use prayer. Lots of it. It's been just one thing after another for months, and I am just going, God, what are you doing? I don't feel like I'm where, I don't know if I'm where I'm supposed to be. I don't know. I need a lot of reevaluation. Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? I'm so very unsure of a lot of things in my life right now. And I'm really reevaluating, am I seeking him and loving him and obeying him the way I need to be so that God can make me a Habakkuk, Lord. I want to do something for somebody in need, for somebody that needs help. I don't know that I want to experience him grab me by my ponytail and put me somewhere, but if that's what it takes, God, do it. I want to be that open to him. And then he just put him back home immediately. Boop, there he was. Immediately, it says. I'm just blown away by this whole section of this. This is amazing to me. I hope you're enjoying getting to know the rest of, this story, the rest of things that happened. Now we're at verse 40. On the seventh day. On the seventh day. So he had been in there for 6 days. And on the seventh day, the king went to bewail. Bewail means to bemoan, to lament, to express deep sorrow. To bewail is a deep sorrow as of the loss of a child. This king was deeply, deeply, during this 6-day period, I think the Holy Spirit was sent to just really check him. Because I think he was feeling guilty. Daniel, with love and kindness, and yeah, he smiled and he laughed, but he didn't really make the king out to be a fool and make fun of him. But he used whatever he could to make it apparent to people who mattered, to anybody who was willing to hear it, I'm guessing, that this is a false god, and to declare the truth, and to take that deception and expose it without using weapons, without using any kind of meanness, hatred. He didn't, go out and try to destroy that. I'm going to take down this false idol and watch how easily I can destroy it with these weapons. He didn't do that. He didn't use any meanness or hatred or anything. He just tried to expose truth. Expose the lies and expose the truth. Hey, look at me. Look how God has taken care of me in my life. Look how God has elevated me, who was taken from this other country and brought here. God blesses those who live for him. It's just so cool to see that happening. It's really, really neat to watch that in people's lives, and hopefully we are people who that can be seen in our lives. So I think this king, it says he went to bewail Daniel. He knew, this was day 7. He's like, Daniel's dead. Those lions were hungry. There's no way he's, it's impossible. It's impossible. And I think that because, he witnessed those footprints in the ashes on the floor and knew that he had been deceived. Daniel had proved to him how wrong he was. And he didn't stand up for Daniel against these people. And I think it was really bothering him. And I think that he was overcome with guilt. We've all, in some way, been there where we have felt guilty that we didn't do something that we feel like we should have done. And then it's sometimes too late, and I'm sure he was feeling like it's too late. It's too late. I can't save him now. These lions have devoured him for sure. But when he came to the den and he looked in and he saw Daniel sitting there, then, verse 41, then cried the king with a loud voice, saying, Great art thou, Lord God of Daniel. There is none other beside thee. He was convinced. There was no way. He had seen God do a miraculous thing by keeping Daniel alive in a den of lions that were hungry. That's amazing. And he drew Daniel out, and he cast those who were the cause of the destruction into the den. What Satan meant for evil, God turned around for good. All these people who were causing the destruction, who were causing others to believe in and to continue to worship a false god instead of the true God, he took them and he cast them in. And it says at the end of verse 42 and at the end of the chapter, they were devoured in a moment before his face. The king saw them immediately devoured by those lions when they were thrown in. I mean, we look at our world today and some things that we're going through, and I am so encouraged to think that even though I've been in a difficult place in my life, God's turning things around. He's got a plan. He's got people that are going to somewhere, when I get connected with them, wherever they are, somehow, who are going to come alongside and help me out, just like the king and Daniel. And you know what God meant for evil, what God meant, that evil, what was, God's man, evil was meant against God's man, Daniel. God said, no, that evil will be turned around. I'll turn around. God said, I'll turn that evil around that's brought against you by those evil people. I'll turn it around. God said, I'll turn it around and make it work out for good. That's scripture. That is scripture. And he'll do that in our lives. He will take what our enemies and what the devourer has meant for evil for us, and he will turn it around for us. And he will do it for us, just like he did and he will do it. He will do it. It's like he'll bring it to pass. He'll make it happen. I think it's in Genesis, at the end of Genesis maybe, where everything that was meant for evil, God turned around for good. Chapter 50, I think. You thought evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it to pass. And a lot of people were saved by it. Well, God's got some good that he's going to bring to pass in my life. I'm carrying that in my heart. I'm carrying that in my spirit. I am using these passages that were written in the book of Daniel thousands of years ago to encourage me today that God has a plan, a good plan. He's going to help me. He's going to get me through this. He's got he's going to take all this bad stuff that keeps happening to me over these last few months, and he's going to turn it around, and he's going to make it work somehow. He's going to bring something good out of it. It's going to happen. I'm holding on to, I have faith that it is going to, I know it's going to, it is. I feel it in me. And reading this, I would encourage each of you, please, go back, turn the sound off, turn me off, and just go back through these slides and look at them, read them for yourself, and ask God to speak to you through them the way he has spoken to me through them. He will take what's been meant for evil. God will turn it around. God will turn that evil right into something that's a blessing. But we have to be willing to seek him, to know him, to worship him, to obey him, to live righteously in the fear of the Lord, and to be careful of our daily decisions and choices. And he'll turn it all around. He will turn it all around. It'll happen. It's going to happen. Be willing. Be willing. And it will happen. It's going to happen in my life. I just know it is. It's going to happen in yours too. regeneratedlady@gmail.com. Email me. Email me. And tell me, what do you think is going to happen in your life after reading and knowing and seeing these scriptures? Were you encouraged by them? Do you think it's all just bunk? Who knows? How the world, everybody has been revealed things differently. What did you see in it that I didn't see? Did you catch something that this could be a month's worth of heavy study and could be picked apart and dug out in just this one chapter. And 42 verses. There's so much there. But anyway, I hope you got something out of it. I just pray that you have a blessed day. I'll be praying for you all. I pray every time I post a video, I pray and I ask God to speak to people in it. It was long. I know it was long. Hope it wasn't too terribly boring. I get chatty, sorry. But have a blessed day. I'll be praying for those who watch this as they watch it to be touched by the Holy Spirit of the true and living God. And I just thank you so much for being here, for being a part of this, for wanting to study and learn more like I do. And I just hope that you're blessed by it. May the Lord be with you. May he bless you and keep you safe and well. Until next time, love you all.